Hi everybody, thanks for joining me for another tutorial in Melinda's Rubber Room. I'm here today to show you how to make this bookbinding card, but it's not just a normal bookbinding. The bookbinding identifies this seal right here on the edge of the card, but the inside also pops up to a fun surprise. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm also going to show you a fun technique using the Glad press and seal paper that you can find at Costco or the grocery store or any place like that. Okay, so I'm going to point you down to my work surface and show you how to make this card. So this was a card that I did a couple weeks back on my Zoom class. Just so you know, this is the Glad press and seal that I was talking about, like that. Okay. So I did this during a Zoom class. I offer my Zoom classes, they're free classes, and I usually offer them on Wednesdays and Saturday mornings from 10 to 12. I would be so happy to have you join us for those classes. You can find out more information on my Facebook page at www.facebook.com/Melinda's Rubber Room. I have all of the current classes, the upcoming classes listed there, as well as videos from my past classes as well. So let's get to this card. So I have all of my instructions over here, so hopefully you can see those if you can zoom in, but I will also go through that with you. So the base of the card is 4 1/4 by 11 inches, and it's scored along the 11-inch line at 4 1/4 and 5 1/2, and that creates the bookbinding effect. So you fold it in to create your standard card base, and then where that other score line is, you fold that back. Okay, and then we are also going to apply a ribbon to this card. So I have to get my card next to me so I can make sure that I'm following everything correctly. Okay, so we have our designer series paper that I'm using. This is the one of the designer series papers that's in our current catalog, and I'm going to use this side today, and I'm just going to attach those onto my card base like that. These pieces measure 4 inches by 4 inches and 4 inches by 1 1/8 inches. So I'm just going to go ahead and get my glue. So this is just regular Tombow glue that I put into a fine tipped applicator that I bought off of Amazon, and I find that it just gives me a nice thin line of glue. You don't need a whole lot of Tombow glue, so this just gives me just enough without having a whole lot of it squirt out on the sides. All right, so I'm just going to adhere that on that small part. Let me get some of my other papers out of the way here. There we go. And then this one I'm going to attach this side. It's just going to go right there in the center. Okay, and it's at this point that I want to put my ribbon on. And I'm going to use the block technique. So all I do is take one of my acrylic blocks, and I'm going to put it along the long side of the block. So this is a C size block. I think this will be big enough to reach around. And then I'm just going to tie my knot using this block as a stabilizer. And it's just over and under, under and over, just like you would tie a regular knot. And then I'm going to cut it from the back side. And that's where I'm going to adhere it. And then these pieces are going to be my tail. Oh yeah, it's going to be long enough. Let me cut these tails back a little bit. It's always easier to cut your ribbon too long than have it too short and you're fighting with it. So, okay, so I'm just going to wrap this around. And then on the inside of this fold area, I'm just going to adhere some adhesive. Okay, so that's going to hold my ribbon in place. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue this whole center part down. So this is going to create our seam binding on our card. You just want to make sure that you apply that ribbon before you put everything together, because that way your ribbon can hide behind your book binding. Okay, I did not adhere that very well. You really should just use regular Scotch tape to adhere this down, but I don't have mine handy, so I'm trying to deal with what I have nearby. You just want to make sure that it's nice and tight so that it's not really loose on the front side, and that's the benefit of being able to cut your ribbon that way. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, so my ribbon is tighter now, so I'm happy with that. So I'm just going to make sure that that is a nice tight seal there. Okay, so then on the front side of my card, I am using, what am I using? Oh, here we go. Okay, so I'm using this die cut, and this was a die cut that is from the Art Gallery stamp set and dies. So this is what it looks like. It says, "Just want to say," and it will cut out your card like that. It'll cut out your cardstock like that. So I ran it through my cut and emboss machine. I took the die off, and then I put the press and seal paper on top of it. So this would have still had all the die cuts in there while I was putting on the cut and seal. And then you turn it over, and if you want the word part, you just put the glue on the back side of those letters, and then you press it down onto a piece of cardstock, and you glue your letters in place. And you make sure that those are really well adhered just by pressing them down like that. And you might want to let it dry a little bit just to make sure that those pieces are dried. And then you very carefully lift off this negative piece. So you can hear that stickiness. That's from that cut and seal paper. So it's going to release your letters, and your letters will all be in the correct place, just like that. So what you can also do is use this negative piece to create this type of result. So that's what I'm going to do on mine, because I already have it cut out. So all I'm going to do is take my negative piece, and I do still want to keep this press and seal on here, because you can see that there's little inserts here that I want to make sure are in the right place. So I'm just going to go with my Tombow glue and go all the way around that. And then I want to go back on these little inner pieces of my O's and A's to make sure that they pick up, and this little piece in that J as well. Okay, I think those are all the fine ones. And then I wanted to go in on some of these letters as well, just to make sure that they're not popping up on me when I adhere it to my paper. And again, I'm just using very little pressure on my glue bottle just to apply just a tiny bit of glue. I hate when the glue squirts out on your card where you don't want it. Okay, I think that will do. Okay, so now that that's all sticky with glue, I'm just going to turn it over onto my cardstock. And this has just a tiny little border around it. I'm going to attach it like that. And I'm just going to scooch it over just a little bit because I use the glue. I can have a little bit of wiggle room. Make sure everything is centered. So the pink part where I cut the dies from, that measures the 3 by 3. And then the matte, which is the purple piece, is 3 1/8 by 3 1/8. So there should have actually been a little dot there for the O too. I guess I missed that when I took my pieces off, but I think it'll still have the same effect. Oops. So you can see the A didn't stick, the inside of the A didn't stick, so I want to go back in and just lay that back down. Put a little pressure on it as you lift up the press and seal. It's kind of like those window clings where you just have to be careful to make sure everything is left behind that you want to be left behind. Okay, so that is the press and seal technique, and you can see how that transferred everything really nice. So now I just want to raise this up. I'm going to use dimensionals for that. I'm just using the mini ones, even though this is a larger space. I just find it's easier to grab the minis. Go ahead and take a pick tool and get those adhesive pieces off, the backings that is. Okay, got those all off. Just going to place that in the center. Okay, so now I want to add some little flowers around my saying. So I'm going to use the hand pen petals. It has all these little dies, which means that you can put all of these flowers on one little square piece of cardstock, run them through one pass in your cut and emboss machine, and you're good to go, which is great. I love that they have duplicate dies in there. So these 3 are all the same, and these 2 are the same. And then I ran through the leaves as well to get some leaves through. I did want to show you the mini cut and emboss machine. This is such a little cutie from Stampin' Up. It has all of the same features as the large cut and emboss machine with the sides that fold up, so it takes very little room on your stamping station. And it runs through just like the regular cut and emboss machine, and it comes with all of the plates that you need to get started. So I just wanted to show you that. It is just such a little cute addition to the Stampin' Up line. Okay, so getting back to my flowers, like I said, I ran them all through just with a little square piece of cardstock, and I'm just going to decorate this. I'm just going to sprinkle some of these flowers around, add some little leaves. I'm going to put 2 of these guys down here. Let me put these up here. Just kind of filling in some of that negative space there. I'm going to put those larger petals on the backing so they stick well. So all of the products that I'm using are in the current Stampin' Up catalog. You can shop my online store at www.melindapierce.stampinup.net. If you don't have a demonstrator already, I would love to have you support my business. And if you like the videos, be sure to give me a thumbs up so I know that I'm serving you well and teaching you things that you want to learn. This is a bigger leaf. I think I'm going to stick that under this guy here. Also, be sure to follow me on my Facebook page. I have a lot of different tutorials on there. I cover the sales that are coming up with Stampin' Up. Have some fun bingo events that happen, and all kinds of fun little things to show you. So join me over there, along with my Zoom classes. The Zoom classes are great just to share different ideas. You don't have to have the same products that I have to do the featured projects that I show you. Just like this one, if you have different designer series paper or dies or stamps, you're just welcome to join us over there, and we have a lot of fun, and everybody always learns something new. It's fun to learn from different people. And everybody has different ideas. It's really fun to see how everybody's projects, even though it's the same layout, they all turn out so different because they're using different papers and different stamps. So I hope you will take the opportunity to check things out over there. I think the hardest part on this project chart is gluing all these pieces down. Move this guy over a little bit. There we go. I think that'll do. I might go back and add more leaves. All right. So with this glue, make sure you do put the pin on top right away because it will dry out in that little container. Okay, so that is the basic bookbinding fold. So now I'm going to show you how to do the inside piece. So you need to decide if you want this side to be popping up or this side. I think I'm going to stick with the purple. So all you're going to do is take a 6x6 piece of paper and fold it in half. You do want to use your bone folder to make sure all these creases are nice and tight. You want to open it up, turn it, and score it the opposite direction. So you should have 4 little squares. You have 4 squares on each side, so it's folded this way and this way. And then we're just going to go from one corner to another. And you're just going to do that once. So don't get ahead of me and try to do the other corner because that's not going to work. You just want to match up your points. Kind of look at the tops and the sides, make sure everything is matching up. If they're not, you can kind of jiggle it in place at this point. You could also put this in your cutting and scoring tool and just score it on a diagonal. That probably would have been easier. All right, so that is a nice little triangle we have. So now what we're going to do is open that up, and from the inside, you're just going to put a little pressure on that inner centerpiece. And where this square is folded, you're just going to fold that in on itself. And then same with this one. And then that creates that fun fold around the inside. Okay, so these 2 opposite corners fold inward. I'm just going to go ahead and reinforce all of those score lines. Okay, so now what we have to do is make sure that this is being attached to the right area of the bookbinding fold. So you want it to open this way. So you're going to attach this inner piece as like a triangle, and you want to make sure that it's centered. None of these points should be going over the edges, and it should be right against that little fold line right there. And you should always do a test to make sure that you're folding it correctly so that it's going to open correctly. Okay, so I'm going to take that, just kind of rotate it, and put some adhesive on there. You do want to use some strong adhesive. I would recommend a liquid glue like Tombow glue, or your Stampin' Seal Plus would probably work as well. Okay, then I'm just going to rotate that back. Make sure it's centered. That looks good. Make sure one more time that it's going to open correctly. And then fold it back down. Put your adhesive on the other side of your square and close the top right on top like that. So I'm trying to get the pin on the glue. Not working too well with one hand. All right. Okay, so that is the surprise in the center. So then all we have to do is embellish the inside. So on the inside, I have 2 pieces that measure 2 3/4 by 2 3/4. And I'm just going to go ahead and stamp my images. These again are from the hand-penned petals. I'm using this large flower image here. And I'm just going to go ahead and stamp that in the gorgeous grape. Now this whole stamp is not going to fit on my little square here, so I am just going to pick a portion and I should have put this under my foam mat. For some reason this isn't going to work. See, for some reason this image does not stamp well without a foam mat, at least for me. So make sure you get a foam mat if you're going to be using this stamp. Okay, so this will turn out much better. The foam mat just gives it a little bit more room for it to make contact with the paper, so it's so much better. So whenever you're using the photopolymer stamps, you do want to use the foam mat. Okay, so I'm just going to use the blends to color this in. And because the blends are alcohol markers, the water-based stamp pads from Stampin' Up are not going to bleed. So you always want to have opposite mediums that you're using if you're going to be coloring. So if you're coloring with alcohol markers, you want to use water-based stamp pads. And if you're using a water-based marker, like our Stampin' Up's normal markers, or watercolor pencils, or anything that has a lot of water to it, then you want to use a StazOn stamp pad, because that is an alcohol-based stamp pad. So if you don't want to have to remember all of that, I would suggest taking a label marker, a label maker, and making a little label for your stamp pads. So the Memento ink pad, which is black, is a water-based stamp pad. So you can use that with your alcohol markers. And then your StazOn is for water-based markers or watercoloring. I think that is probably the most asked question that I get, is which pad goes with which marker. So I just find it's easier to remember that it's the opposite of whatever you're coloring with. So if you're coloring with alcohol markers, use water-based pads. If you're coloring with a water-based marker or water-based products, you want to use an alcohol pad, which is primarily your StazOn. Okay, so I'm just going through this really quickly. You would probably take more time in coloring these. But I'm just using the light blends to go over the main area. I went back and added a little bit of highlights with the darker blend, going back over just real quickly with the light blend, to add some shading. Okay, so again, the front of the card says, just want to say. So I had a little stamp here. It says, feel better, friend. And that is from the Hand Pen Petals. I find it's hard to have get well cards on hand when you need them. So I'm kind of adding to my stock of those. So this is going to go on the card as like a triangle. Not a triangle, but a diamond. Well, not even a diamond, but it's going to go on the card like that. So you want to make sure that the words are going across this way. So I'm just going to ink that up, stamp that right there, and then attach that to the inside of my card. Again, this was the card that I had misstamped, so that's why the back looks so ugly. But nobody will see that. Okay, so that will go on just like that. And then I have another square that will go on the other side. That will just be where I will write my greeting. So I'm not going to stamp that. And that again gets placed on the opposite square, just like so. And then it all folds up and fits in a regular A2 size envelope. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that video and I hope you learned something new. That is always my intention for making these videos. Please join me at my Facebook page at Melinda's Rubber Room. I would be happy to see you over there and can answer any of your questions. In the meantime, feel free to comment on this video. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and thank you for following me. Bye-bye.